Okay, welcome. This, by the way, I think is probably for a lot of people here, and from my opinion, one of the most important webinars that I could ever do for you. I'm going to, unfortunately, I do have to get a flight later this morning, but actually this afternoon. I have to leave early this afternoon, and so I'm going to be taking questions, but I'm not going to be able to take as many questions as I usually take. Last week, I think this webinar went almost 4 hours. Once you did it after the question, not the webinar itself. But this is a really good topic, and I'm actually very pleased to be presenting it this morning because I think it's something that can really help a tremendous amount of people in terms of your resume. And it's a topic that I plan on presenting and sharing with BCG candidates and others after I do it today. This is, as it says, it's about selecting the right practice area, position your resume for success in the job search. And this, by the way, is one of the biggest problems and things that people do wrong with their resumes and in their job search. They simply make huge mistakes with this, and it prevents people from getting jobs. Most of the time, when a lot of people that show up on the resume workshops are making these mistakes, and that's one reason that I'm very excited. And this could be literally one of the most important webinars you ever hear, regardless of whether you're a law student or an attorney or you've been practicing for many years. This is really about the biggest mistakes that people tend to make on their resumes. And if you're making these mistakes, which a lot of people are, or tons of people are, these are the mistakes that most often prevent people from getting positions. Nothing hurts a legal career more than if your resume is not completely focused on one practice area. I'll talk a lot about that today. If you're trying to get jobs in multiple practice areas, that's going to hurt you. And if you put your resume on one side of a divisive social, political, or other issue, that's going to hurt you. And the big thing to understand right off the bat is that if a law firm is looking at your resume, really needs to look like someone doing that type of work. And it has to have multiple clues that you would be a good fit for a perfect practice for the specific practice area. I would encourage you to, if you can, to take notes on this webinar because it's that important. I usually don't ask people to do that. But one of the notes I would ask you to take is there's hours of resume reviews online that you can look at and see me reviewing people's resumes. And I would definitely recommend reviewing a lot of those reviews because this is exactly what we do. And almost every resume gets this wrong. So your resume needs to look like you're interested in one practice area. And if your resume doesn't do this, you're not going to get interviewed for jobs that are hiring for that practice area. And if you are hired and the law firm is a well-run business, it's probably not a well-run business if you're hired, and you're probably not going to have a real future there. It's probably not going to be that great of a firm. And I'll explain that to you in a little more detail as we go on today. You also need to you're taking a huge gamble when you put stuff on your resume about things like your position on various social issues. And those social issues could be abortion, capital punishment, and things that two sides are radically opposed. And one side doesn't like the other and vice versa. Your political party can be divisive. If you put down that you're a hardcore Republican or a very hardcore Democrat or whatever, that's going to upset people. And you may believe all this stuff is important, but not everyone's going to like this. Think about it. And these are social issues that are dividing the country, and maybe they always have, but why would you in a million years want to alienate some people and put that in your resume? Because it's going to make it look like you're not interested in a law firm anytime. So you can put things on like you spend all your time and your free time doing something that clearly doesn't make it look like you're interested in working in a law firm or would prefer to do something else. People make some of the dumbest mistakes. They will do things like list the fact that they've done 200 hours of pro bono work at a major law firm. These are things that may hurt you. So again, if you want to list things about being a Republican or Democrat in your resume, and if you insist on this, you're just going to alienate certain employers or certain people in them. It's going to automatically disqualify you from jobs and a lot of the more things you list. And you can list all these things on your resume if you like, but it's going to hurt you a substantial portion of the time. You just can't do it. And you may think you're also helping yourself, talking about the fact that you've done all this work and different practice areas. That's not going to hurt you. Any sane employer is going to expect you to be committed to something. If they're hiring you to do commercial litigation, they are not interested in the fact that you want to do real estate or trademark. They're hiring you to do one thing. And employers really don't care about what you're interested in. They want you to be interested in one thing, and that's just how it works. So they care about your experience, whether or not you can do their work, if you're interested in doing their work, and if you look like you want to do what you're doing. If you look like you're interested in doing something else, why would any law firm hire you if they have the option to hire other people that are? And any law firm that has a relatively sophisticated clients is going to want somebody working on the matters who understands their practice area and is committed to it and is more interested in their practice area than social or other causes or anything else. Clients don't want dabblers. Clients don't want lawyers that aren't committed to doing their type of work. If they're paying high billable hours or they have a matter, they want someone that knows how to do it. And that's just not good. It's interesting to me, this is just an aside, is some of the most marketable practice areas are right now, and actually for the past couple of years, have been things like family law or trust and estates or things that you wouldn't think. But the reason they're so marketable is the people are committed to it. Also, insurance defense is marketable. All these practice areas that you wouldn't necessarily think are marketable are. More so than corporate attorneys in a market slowdown. I'm going to go into all of this today. This is an introduction, but once you understand this stuff, it should change your resume and the way you approach your job search forever, because it's that important. Everyone that shows up to my resume workshops and often is making these mistakes. When I talk to people in BCG that are trying to get a position, they're often always making these mistakes. I don't know why this isn't more taught. But if you fix this stuff, you will get multiple more jobs, whether or not you're using a recruiter or searching on your own. It's going to transform your job search. So an unfocused resume. So an unfocused resume is going to waste the time of job. It's going to waste the time of you seeking a job. It wastes the time of employers, and anyone involved. The employer is not going to want to hire you. You're not going to be happy about not getting a job. And I estimate when I review candidates at BCG, the only thing I really care about is whether or not that candidate has a focused resume. So 95% of the resumes that I review, their resume is not focused. And as a matter of fact, they come to BCG and they apply for jobs, and I can see the jobs they're applying for in practice areas that they don't even do. Why would I want to represent someone that is trying to switch practice areas or doesn't even know what type of work they do? That's crazy. The 95% people get jobs and are making mistakes. The law firms are probably making mistakes when they hire them. And then those 5% whose resumes are focused always get interviews and jobs. So what do I mean by a focused resume? So you may be doing corporate transactional law right now, but you may have been, before law school, you may have worked for an entertainment company. You may have been on the Entertainment Law Journal and law school. You may have written some papers about it. You may be a member of a entertainment lawyers group, and then you may be applying for a corporate transactional job. No one in their right mind is going to hire you. You obviously want to do entertainment law. So if someone hires you for that, you're going to have a very difficult time getting a job. Why would someone hire you for that? Because you're obviously going to leave and do something else. So the 5% of attorneys with focused resumes get more jobs and better jobs than the 95% that don't know what they want to do. You may think that personal injury is a practice area that you would never practice, and it's not a good practice area. Let me tell you something. Some of the most successful attorneys out there that I encounter, meaning people that have make millions of dollars a year are doing practice areas that are very similar to things like personal injury, because they're able to bring in a lot of clients that do it. They have a specialty, and no one else is like them with a specialty. And they get jobs. So I don't care as a recruiter where you went to law school. I don't care how big of the firm you worked in. The only thing that sells anything in the market is being focused on something, meaning you have to be focused on a practice area. You can't say you do 15 different types of patent prosecution work, and also you have to say you do something and you have to be focused. Everybody wants a focused resume. I can get an attorney focused on family law, immigration, trust and estates, workers' compensation, personal injury, plaintiff's employment attorney who barely graduated from a fourth law school. I can get them more interviews than someone that graduated from a top law school but doesn't know what they want to do, or has their resumes all over the map. Certain law schools create people like that. Yale Law School creates people like that. They typically don't last in law firms. People that go into law firms that are unfocused, despite their academic qualifications, by not choosing some sort of specialized practice area, never amount to what they could do. You can get into some sort of firm and be much more successful than someone that may have gone to Harvard Law School, meaning if you're just focused. So if your resume reflects a lack of commitment to your pros and practice area or setting, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And focus matters more than anything. It's the most essential qualification you can have in the legal market. It's more important than where you went to law school. It's more important than anything. The more focused you are, the better off you're going to be. And it's very important that you're focused. It's the only thing that matters. Your focus is the only thing that you really have to offer the market. If you're not focused, then you're just going to get pushed along and you're not going to know what's going on. The thing with focus, and the reason I want to explain it to you, is I'm focused on making law firm placements. It's all I do. It's all I've been doing for a quarter of a century. And every day I'm learning more and more things. And that's why I'm doing these webinars. If I did 15 different types of placements, contract attorneys, in-house attorneys, I wouldn't have that focus and be good at what I'm doing. The longer you do something, the better off you get. So it's the same thing with attorneys. I can get a focused resume for attorneys, interviews, anywhere. It doesn't matter. You could be practicing in a small town in Colorado and want to move to a big town in Wisconsin as a family law attorney, and you will get jobs if you're focused. The same thing goes for corporate attorneys and other types of attorneys. But focused resumes get interviews. And if someone isn't focused and someone's interested in them, they don't know what they're doing. Why would you, if you're a law firm and you have work for a residential transactional real estate attorney, why would you hire someone who's a corporate attorney, a real estate attorney, and also maybe does a little bit of litigation on the side? Is that going to help you if you're a law firm? It doesn't help anyone. So it's the same thing. You have to understand how all this works and why focus is important. People put unfocused resumes together because they think, wrongly, that's going to help them. They think that having all this different experience makes them more attractive to employers. No, if you don't know what you want to do, then you're dead. Why would an employer want to hire someone that doesn't know what they want to do? Because if they don't know what they want to do, they're going to continually not know what they want to do. You know what a good resume is? A good resume is someone that may have, let's talk about this, majored in nursing in college and got a nursing degree, and then worked as a nurse and for a couple of years, then went into administration of a hospital for a couple of years, then went to law school. Then when they were in law school, were on the Health Law Society. And then they worked at a health law firm their first year of law school as a health. And then they worked at another position doing health law as a second-year attorney. A really good health law firm would be out of their mind not to hire that person because they know they're going to be a health law attorney. If that person does that for a couple more years, and when they get out and specializes in another form of healthcare law, they're going to be pretty much set for life. They can go to in-house in a hospital or a health company They can get jobs in health law firm companies or health law firm firms. This is what you need to do. You need to be focused. Doesn't matter where you went to law school. I remember I don't know if it still exists, but I used to get all these resumes from we had this other company called Legal Authority that would help people do mass mailings of their resume and things. And it was very interesting what happened there. People would graduate from these LLM programs in obscure things like education law. And I remember there was some school or something down in Florida that was doing it. People that were graduating in education law with these LLMs that were teachers or something before they went to law school were all getting jobs. They just, because that's what they obviously wanted to do. So they would approach this legal authority company. Legal authority would apply to jobs for them or help them send out resumes, and they would get jobs. So all of them, and it wasn't a top 50 school or anything like that. It was just what it was. And people that aren't focused, they never last long. They're horrible investments for employers. They're horrible investments for clients because they're just going in 15 different directions. They never get good at anything. They're just not good investments. The average attorney thinks that this is how most people think, and it's wrong. It's wrong if you're a law student. It's wrong if you're an attorney. It's wrong. The biggest people that make this mistake a lot of times are military attorneys. They never get jobs with their resumes, and they think it's important to list every thing. They were a marksman. They did this on their resume. But the average attorney thinks the most important aspect of getting a position are the quality of their qualifications. They went to a great law school. Congratulations. They have worked for some good employers in the past. They think that's really important, and people are really going to buy into that and hire them because they got high SAT or LSAT scores. Maybe they also went to a great college and did well there. And then they were able to get a job as a summer associate and a first-year attorney in a big law firm. They think that they got there and they went on one practice area, then they maybe worked a little bit in another one. And they think that many times even the best attorneys do this, but it's been more common with other types of attorneys that aren't the best. The best attorneys typically go to large law firms most of the time where they're taught to focus early in their career. They have to. A lot of attorneys don't do that, and they go to other types of firms. And when they get there, they believe that they should be focused on something that gives them experience and different types of things. And then employers are going to be very impressed that they have this varied experience. That's insane. So some attorneys think that also that their commitment to social causes and politics is more important than their interest in practicing law. If you had the option of hiring someone that for a corporate law position or for a commercial litigation position that had been involved in pro-environmental groups, anti-environmental groups, different types of social causes, and it was all over their resume, and that's obviously what they're interested in, I just can't imagine that you would think if you're an employer that you think that's a good idea. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing these things, but a big law firm or most law firms that have to do work for clients that are paying or need a certain skill, it doesn't help them. So here's the truth about getting hired by 95% of the law firms. And here's the truth about what 95% of resumes do wrong. So just imagine me. So I review resumes all day long. I review resumes of people that are applying to BCG. I review resumes of people that I'm trying to recruit for different jobs. All day, every day, I review resumes. People that work for me review resumes. And only 1 in 20 is doing the right thing. So 1 in 20 attorneys is almost intentionally, or 19 out of 20 attorneys is almost intentionally just railroading their career by doing these things wrong in their resumes. They're holding themselves back in a way that makes it that they're never going to get the sort of job that they want. It's just not going to happen. They're never going to advance in the legal profession the way they want. It's insane. And I'm sorry to be so direct about it, but almost everyone's doing it. It hurts my company because I can't work with those people. It hurts their marketability because no one's going to hire them at the level that they should be hired. Here's something to understand. The first thing is there are different prestige levels of law firms, and there's something for everyone. You can't, of course, walk in and expect to get a job at a major law firm without the right background, nor would you want to if you don't have it. Why would you put yourself into competition with people that are, I'm not trying to say this in a negative way, but people that have different skill sets than you or ability to analyze problems. It's just how it is. And one thing is, again, some of the most successful lawyers that are more successful than partners in most giant law firms are people that do things like personal injury and may have their own firms. They do very well. Anybody can get a position with a firm appropriate to their qualifications, meaning their ability to do the work, if your resume is focused. Law firms only care about, literally, certain law firms, like your very best law firms, will care about if you were summer associate in a big firm and you went to a certain law school, or you went to any law school and did very well and you have experience. So they care about that. But the most important things they care about are your focused, the focus of your resume. The more types of legal experience you have, the worse off you're going to be. It's a liability. I see resumes all the time. It's just been crazy. So someone may have been like a corporate attorney for 6 years. And then all of a sudden they go to a new firm and they're there for 6 months practicing real estate law. And then they want to apply for real estate law jobs on BCG or get jobs at another real estate law firm, even though they haven't been doing it for more than 6 months. Just absolutely crazy. Who would want to hire someone like that? Now, maybe after 4 or 5 years they will, but if you have experience doing other things than your practice area, that's a liability. And also, the less you look like you're interested in practicing law, and the more interested you are in social issues, the less law firms are going to be interested in you. So again, I've been going over this ad nauseum for a quarter of a century. And I place people all the time that know how to do this and do it correctly. So you can, if you care about this, you're going to make changes based on what I'm saying. And you should also review all the webinars that I've done where I mark up people's resumes and go over this. You should also review all of the webinars that I've done about resumes, but this is the most important one that you can ever listen to, because this is where we're really focusing on this. But you just have to understand that nothing whatsoever messes people up with more than putting a lack of focus into their resumes and their job searches. It's going to limit your career, and it's going to hold you back. So nothing, by the way, benefits an employer less than hiring someone who's unfocused and does not know what they want to do, or is more interested in social issues than practicing law. A law firm would have to be insane to hire someone like this, and almost none of them do. Now, sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they have people there in their law firm that also support these social causes, but it doesn't help the law firm grow. And so it will hurt your career if you do these things. The other thing is, I've gone over the basics of this. Your resume needs to look like you're a committed specialist if you want to get hired. So it's the same thing I was talking about earlier. I'm going to go into a little more depth here. But unless it's a small law firm in a rural area, or a small law firm that will take whatever matter there is of someone that walks in the door, most law firms hire specialists and not generalists. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, if you're a law firm in a small geographic area, or if you're a law firm that wants to do any type of work for any type of client, then yes, you can, or you're a solo practitioner, or you're with a 3 or 4 person law firm, then yes, you can have a generalist resume. But other than that, almost all law firms that can pay high salaries, that can give you a lot of opportunity, are going to want to hire a specialist. And if the law firm wants to hire a specialist or a generalist, they're typically not going to be in business very long, or they're usually going to have a difficult time paying you, because they're never going to get work at a higher billable hour in a repeat type of business, because they'll never be an expert in something. People will go to firms that are experts in something. If you look at personal injury law firms, that's all they do. If you look at law firms that do litigation for companies, that's often all they do. So the more focused you are, the better off you're going to be. This is just how the business world works. If you listen to the radio, you'll hear these law firms talking about doing tax resolution. That's all they do. The business world works this way. People hire people who know what they're doing, and not those who do not. So this is an example I give quite a bit. You have a brain tumor. Are you going to go to your local general practitioner and ask them to fix it? No, you're going to go to your local practitioner when you get a really bad infected bug bite, or maybe you need stitches because you cut your finger while slicing a bagel. These are just how it works. People send their work to specialists, especially when it's important. You don't get heart surgery from a generalist. You don't go to see a psychiatrist for a infected foot. People go to people that know what they're doing, and not those who do not. Law firms are the same way. If you want to make money as an attorney, if you want to have a career as an attorney, if you want to get repeat business as an attorney, you're going to have to go and specialize in something. I'm sorry. You may think you're really doing the right thing by doing a lot of different types of things, but the only way you're going to have the type of career you want is to specialize in something. If you look like you'd rather be doing something else, you're doing too many things. That's not good. If your resume looks like you have experience doing a lot of different things, anybody that's looking for an attorney to be a specialist is going to not hire you. Being a specialist pays more. Being a specialist gets more clients. Being a specialist makes you better and better at something as time goes by. You absolutely need to be a specialist. I don't know what else I can say. Now, again, if you want to work in a small town or in a small market, or don't really need to advance and really get outside your comfort zone, then yes, you can certainly be a generalist and talk to people as they come in. But those sorts of people are never going to pay you a lot, because if they have the money, they're going to go see a specialist. That's just how it works. So I have made thousands of placements, thousands. And again, it's not just me that's made those placements, it's people on my team. But I don't think I can recall ever placing a generalist. I may have done it at some point, but I don't recall it. Every placement that I can recall, and of course I don't have perfect recall, has been a generalist. People get hired and do one thing. It doesn't really matter what. So when people come to BCG, by the way, they have the option of selecting a primary practice area out of 300 plus practice areas, and then a secondary practice area out of 300 plus practice areas. The best candidates generally can select one or two primary practice areas that are related. So it might be real estate commercial transactions and real estate general transactions, or it might be just real estate finance. So you have to be very focused on something, and it needs to be specific. And the more specific it is, the better. And the more expertise you have, almost always, the better off you are. If you go to big law firms in places like New York and LA and Chicago, all the attorneys there are specialists in the big firms and in the mid-sized firms. Legal jobs go to specialists. And there's always, if you're a specialist, there's always going to be people willing to hire you. Again, I've worked with tens of thousands of attorneys, and they insisted. And when I say work with, I've advised them on their resumes and reviewed the resumes. And they've insisted on calling themselves generalists and crafted their resumes this way. And I've told them what I'm telling you now. And I've told them this: you need to focus your resume if you want to work in a law firm where you're going to have a future and where they're going to get repeat clients. You need to focus your resume on one practice area. You need to remove all references to work that has nothing to do with your focus. So what does that mean? So imagine your first year summer associate, you worked in a law firm doing ERISA work. Your second summer of law school, you worked in a law firm doing intellectual property work. Then in your first job, you worked in a government office doing Social Security related work. And then in your third job, you decided to move from a government office doing Social Security work. And now you're at a law firm doing corporate work. And you've been there for 6 months. And now you want a new corporate job. No, you are all over the place. And no one is going to hire you that knows what they're doing for a corporate job because you have no focus. What do you do in that situation? You basically say you work someplace and you don't put a lot of description down. You just say, I'm a summer associate, first year, second year. But you need to have, the resume needs to be focused. And again, watch webinars where I review people's resumes, show up to webinars. where I review your resume. You just need to do that. You also need to choose a practice area and go to the BCG website and look at practice areas that are more closely related to the type of work that you do. You need to do that. You don't try to apply to jobs where you don't have a lot of experience. You stick to your focus. You have to have a focus. Again, every person that wants to succeed has a focus. There's a famous book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And if you haven't read it, I would read it, and then I would read it again, and then I would read it again. I remember Tony Robbins said, I heard him say once at a seminar, he said that this particular book, he'd read it a few times, but he knew people that read it at least once a year. And everybody that read this book was wealthier and better off than the more they read it than the people that didn't. But one of the things about that book is it got a whole chapter about the importance of specialized knowledge. So the more specialized your knowledge is, the better off you're going to be. And that's just how it works. And this is what this book was talking about whenever it was written, 1920s but it's a very famous book and something I would recommend reading. If you want to be a generalist, you're going to have a very difficult time getting hired, and you're probably shortchanging yourself too. I know this because most attorneys do. If you're a trademark attorney, no one cares if you once worked as a corporate transactional attorney. But listing this on your resume is just going to make you look uncommitted and like you're not a trademark attorney. If you have done 4 different practice areas in the past 3 years and are currently doing family law, no one cares what you did in the past. They only want to speak to what you're doing now and will hold your past against you because you're going to look like a flake. You can do whatever you want and will. Again, people do their resumes and they think, oh, this is great that I did all this kind of work. Aren't people going to be impressed with me? No, they're not. Your resume needs to talk about one practice area and only if you get a job. If you look like you've been committed to whatever that practice area is about since you started your career, that's great. I know a woman, it's very interesting. Her father was sued for trademark infringement and got this huge multi-million-dollar judgment against him. Because of that, they had to move out of their house and all this stuff. And she decided right then that she was going to help him. And when she grew up and become a trademark attorney, she got a job as a summer associate doing trademark law her first summer. She got one her second summer at a little bit bigger firm, even though she didn't have great grades. And then because of all that focus, she wound up in one of the best firms ever doing trademark law. And even though she didn't have the grades to get in there, but she was focused on it. She had a story. She was focused and she got a good job. So you can talk about whatever you want in terms of your practice areas on your resume, but pretty much every practice area that you list that's not your current practice area and focus is automatically going to take you down one letter grade. An A will become a B the first time you do it. A B will become a C the second time you do it, because you're just basically downgrading yourself. Law firms that have the type of work you want to do want to hire people with a consistent interest and focused on a certain practice area. If you start doing a bunch of things or have experience with different firms and no sense of a long-term commitment, any law firm in the world will avoid you. What happens, by the way? So some of the things that any law firm that's good will avoid you. A lot of things that people do on their resume that they don't realize or their careers permanently hurt them. So if you go into an in-house position, what is in-house other than working out a bunch of different matters and showing you're not committed to a law firm? When you go in-house, law firms start avoiding you. They will not hire you most of the time. You can get in maybe to a small law firm, but almost always the law firms will avoid you if you go in-house. And you would do the same. Someone that's not committed to a law firm and suddenly is doing a bunch of different types of practice areas is not a good hire. Would you hire, again, someone to operate in your brain who's worked as a brain surgeon for 6 months and said, hey, I'm committed to this, but formerly were a foot doctor, eye doctor, and radiologist? Come on, just think about what you would think if you were this person. This doesn't make any sense. This would be a train wreck for a hospital to hire such a person to be a brain surgeon. No hospital would hire them. No person would want to go see that person for help if they knew that. What kind of patient would trust their brain to someone like that? You'd have to be crazy. But people do this stuff on their legal resumes all the time. No one is interested in the fact, if you're trying to get a job in a competitive firm, that you did some pro bono work after getting your law degree for some people in the Brazilian jungle for the last year. No one cares about that. That's going to show you're not focused. They're not going to like that. You may think it's cool. You may think that this is cool because this is the exact sort of thing that your professors in college said was noble and something you should be doing. You may think it's really cool because of that. But honestly, law firms are a business. They have to make money. They make money when you're committed to what they're doing and not something else. And if they see that, they're going to want to hire you. They want someone that will sit down at a desk and basically work, and make them money and make other people their money. That's what they do. So do you expect someone, after you spent a year doing pro bono work in the jungle of Brazil, to hire you for a job to work on a merger between a few Fortune 500, 100 companies? Are you out of your mind? And I'm not trying to be rude here, but does that help you? Does that help the client? Does that help the law firm? Do you think law firms are going to be impressed by this? And attorneys are often, again, very proud that they got experience doing different things. The litigator's proud they got experience working on a corporate-related contract, and they list that on the resume. The corporate attorney's excited that they got into pitch in on some intellectual property issue. And none of this is going to help you to get a job in another practice area if you don't have prior experience doing this. People chronicle their experience working on a bunch of disparate and unrelated matters as if it was going to help them, when it does the exact opposite. It's going to mess you up. No one is going to pay attention to you after they figure out this isn't what you want, or you have no focus. Who would you? And so let's compare getting a position in a law firm to dating. And I bring this kind of example up because it hits home. One person says, I like dating men. Another says, I also like women. I also like dating young people and old people. So the person likes dating men, they like dating women, they like the old, they like the young. Sometimes they like to date men and women and other couples. So they date a couple, one person at the same time. And they talk about how they like to date married people and single ones too. They like dating rich people and poor people. And they don't care if the person uses hard drugs, but if they do drugs, they're fine with that as well. Do you think anybody in the market, now they might be avant-garde and open to this sort of thing, and I'm not criticizing anybody if they do this, but most people aren't going to be interested in that because the person has no idea what they want. How are you going to know how you fit in with that person's plans and how you're special? How are you going to know if you're unique? Or are you just going to constantly be having it hung over your head that any person that person meets could be, it doesn't matter what you are. And the law firm, really, if the law firm can't figure out what you stand for and put you in a bucket, they're going to likely, the same thing, the person is going to have a very tormented and difficult dating life. It's just, no one is interested. Most people are not interested in someone that identifies with them as special. So it's not about lifestyle choices. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these choices, but most people, meaning 99.5% of the population, wants to see some sort of focus and clarity, at least a little bit, in terms of the people that they are involved with. It's the same thing with dabbling in different things and not knowing what you want to do. Imagine if you were 18 years old and your friends were geriatric people in their 90s, then also people in other countries, and also people your age, but then also young children that were 12 and 13, and these were the people you spent your time with. This is just not how it works. And so in terms of your law firm and trying to get a job, you absolutely cannot look like you're dabbling in different things and like you don't know what you want to do. No one is impressed with this. As a matter of fact, it's actually repulsive to most law firms. And this is what, anytime someone shows me a resume and says, I can't get a job, almost always, this is what the person's doing. Very few law firms, for example, hire people to do plaintiff and defense work. I've seen people that are working in plaintiffs' firms or defense firms trying to get job in plaintiffs firms doing employment, for example. And the employment firms that are doing one or the other aren't interested. They don't want them to do both. And that's in the same practice area. You have to choose one side. If you send a plaintiff's attorney to a defense firm, most of them are going to get mad at me. They hate each other. These are opposite sides, and this is just one practice area. So law firm is not going to hire you if it's a good law firm or a law firm that has decent amount of business. If you're a corporate and litigation attorney, you have to be one or the other. You're either a transactional attorney or a litigator. You cannot be both. Law firms are not going to hire you to be a patent attorney if you're a real estate attorney. You're either a real estate attorney, not a patent attorney. Law firms are not going to hire you to be an employment attorney if you're a general commercial litigator. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because sometimes people think, oh, I don't want to do this practice area anymore. Anybody's going to hire me to do this new practice area I'm interested in. Why would they do that? Why would you? If you have 10 applicants and 9 of them are from people that are committed to that practice area, but you have nothing to do with that practice area and want to switch, what makes you so special that they would possibly have an interest in you? Because you went to a good law school, or because this is something you want to do? They don't care. Like, who's going to hire someone like that? If it just doesn't work that way. No one cares what you're interested in. They care about your experience, and they care about how your resume looks. This goes for law students. It goes for everyone. It's practicing attorneys, and law firms aren't going to hire you to be a federal tax attorney, which is transactional in nature. If you're a tax controversy attorney, they're not the same type of thing. No one's going to hire you if you were formerly a litigator at a big firm, probably doing commercial litigation. If you went in-house and now do litigation, corporate, and IP. And this is what happens, by the way, to attorneys that go in-house. This is why it becomes so difficult for them to get jobs later, because they start doing multiple things. This is, again, if you want to go in-house, it's up to you. But if you start doing all these different things, it's going to hurt you. No one in their right mind is going to hire you to be a litigator for a law firm if you now do 3 different things. You're no longer a specialist. Your experience is different. You've watered down your focus. It's over. So you've abandoned your craft and the practice setting. You're no longer someone working for paying clients. You're working for a paying client. And your practice setting is you're now a generalist. So that's just not marketable. The law firm can do better. They can find specialists, and they will find specialists. Again, if you've been a litigator or a tax attorney and now a corporate attorney with law firms, they can do better, and they will. Unless they've lost their marbles. Again, why would you hire someone to do that? They're not going to hire you. Would you? You're not committed. And ideally, your resume should look like you've always done one thing and been interested in it. Now, you may wonder, I've been spending a lot of time on this, and I'm sure you get the message, but I'm going to talk about this a little bit more because so many people do this. I don't know why. Again, 95% of all resumes are making this mistake, and because of that, people are not getting the jobs that they want. You need to go over your resume very carefully, and you need to decide what it is you're going to do. You need to commit to it, and then you need to meditate on it or whatever and mark it up and look like you've always been interested in one thing. And if you haven't done a bunch of different things, you need to water down whatever descriptions you have about your previous jobs and make it look like you're committed to something. It's very interesting. Document review attorneys. So there are people that do e-discovery, and that's all they do. And if they're committed to it, and they've always been committed to it, they make, in many cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year with that expertise. If they're just a contract attorney and they'll do this or that or whatever they want, then they don't have that luxury. They don't make that kind of money, and they just bounce around. You have to be interested in something. And if you have been one thing and now you're something else, most law firms are going to think that you're probably going to change your interest in this. No one wants this. It benefits no one. I just want to make a couple quick points, and because a lot of people watching this may think, oh, I want to switch practice areas. You can switch practice areas, but most attorneys that switch practice areas are basically unhappy practicing law, and they go back to switching practice areas again or going to enough for practice ends. They don't know why they're unhappy, but they think that switching practice areas is going to change that. it often benefits no one. So here's a very common situation of an attorney might be applying for jobs. They're a commercial litigator. They're doing commercial litigation. Their last job before that was a family law attorney. Before that, they were a tax law attorney. And this is a bad situation. So how do you fix that? Again, this is the kind of stuff that I cover on resume reviews, but their current job is a litigation attorney doing commercial litigation. The next job, they talk about how they drafted pleadings and things that are related to litigation. And then the job before that, because it's not even related at all, they just basically just list the firm and just say they were an associate or whatever at the firm and don't talk a lot about their experience. Less is more. So you do not want to list a lot of information on your experience. You can have a transaction sheet if you're a corporate or real estate or patent attorney, list your patents, but you do not want to send people in a bunch of different directions when they look at your resume. They need to see one direction. All roads lead to one thing. And if they see multiple things, then it's going to hurt you and they're going to move on to someone that's focused. This is how employers view your resume. They don't care. They're not looking at your school when you've been out a couple of years. They're looking at what your practice area is and how focused you are. And if your resume doesn't show, if your resume shows an interest in a bunch of different things and you look like you want to do something, and if your resume does not show an interest in a bunch of different things, and you look like you've always wanted to do something and you've always done it, that's enough. That will get you a job. So I really want to make sure everyone understands this because this is unbelievably important. Any resume that does this well typically will be able to get a job. You just need to look focused. And when I'm saying get a job, you're placeable by recruiters. Your resume will go to the top of the pile when you're applying for jobs. You will find someone that's interested in you. If you're interested in a bunch of different things, then people are going to be just confused and they're going to think, what makes us special? What makes this job special to you? We're going to find someone that is. So this is, again, one of the most important things. If you have understood this and take notes, you're going to be ahead of 95% of attorneys out there that are making this mistake. The other thing you need to do is if you are choosing a practice area that you want to do and that you want to focus on, you need to choose a practice area that you have substantial and recent experience in and stick to that area. So what does that mean? So sometimes your resume may talk about how you practice workers' compensation law, and that's all you do. In that case, you have to basically realize that no one is going to hire you to be a corporate attorney unless law schools start pumping out or stop pumping out tens of thousands of new attorneys for 10 or more years. If you're searching for a job in an area of the United States so remote and inhospitable to working there that the employer has no choice, it's just not going to happen. So the experience you talk about should match the jobs you're applying for. It has to. You just can't do it any other way. Now, when a law firm hires an attorney, but with experience, they don't care what you want to do. They don't. You can't go you don't want to interview someone for a position, I don't know, taking care of your children, that comes in and says, my real goal is to be a construction laborer. I really want to do that, but I'm taking this for now in order to get something else. That's a horrible hire. I hired some guy once that came in and said recession of 2008, 2009 to clean my fish tank. And he said that he was taking this job because he'd been laid off from some other job. And then he came in, and the first time he cleaned my fish tank, he destroyed it by scratching up the whole interior. It's a bad hire. Like, why would I hire someone that was interested in something else? He did a horrible job. The law firms don't care about what you want to do when you're a lateral attorney. They care about what you're trained in. If you're a law student, they care about what your resume looks like you want to do. If you apply to jobs that have nothing to do with your experience, the law firm is just not going to be interested in you for that opening. Why would they be? Now, if they're not getting applications, then that's okay. So here's the example. You're searching for someone to watch your child and maybe live in your house and take care of them full time while you're at work. Or to help you because you have a bunch of child. You post an advertisement for someone to do that. And a professional roofer, which is very difficult job out in the sun and on roofs that looks like he eats nails for breakfast shows up, what are you going to think? If he says, I saw your household as a job opening for a babysitter, I'm a roofer and interested in babysitting, I was thinking about doing something thinking about someone different. And that's what you would think. And you wouldn't hire the person. Now, both jobs are similar maybe, but in terms of the responsibility level, but they're different. You wouldn't do that. So there's nothing, it's the same thing with someone with litigation experience applying for a corporate job. There's nothing different than someone with trademark experience applying for a plaintiff's litigation job. There's just no difference. This is insane to employers with a job opening. Now, I'm going to just go off topic for just a second. Say you're a trademark attorney and you want to get a job as a litigator or a corporate attorney. Is it possible for you to do that? Yes, sometimes. You could join associations of that practice area that you want to do. You could network. You could meet someone and become a good acquaintance of them and tell them what you want to do. And maybe they give you a chance if they believe you. But if you're just cold applying to jobs and things and don't know people and there's no reason for them to bring you on, that's insane. The cost of an inability to select a matching practice area, what it's going to do compared to having a focused resume is you need to think about. So after 2 or 3 years of experience, a junior associate becomes a mid-level associate. If you're not focused, you simply will not get interviews or be hired. You also would not hire an attorney without the correct experience either. If you're accused of murder, you wouldn't hire a patent attorney to help you through that. You just wouldn't. Understanding that law firms hire attorneys if a law firm knows what they're doing and has clients that are willing to pay, that they're not going to hire you if your resume doesn't match what they're looking for. For some reason, I don't understand why most attorneys continue to select practice areas that their resume says nothing about, and they don't get jobs. Your company, are you going to hire an attorney whose background talks about how they're interested in very social causes and brags about all the pro bono work that they've done, their political affiliations, they're members of different groups, whether they be racial, religious, and different things, and their commitment to these groups and other statements on their resume, so much that you can't figure out why is the person possibly practicing corporate law if they're interested in all these things. Let me tell you the way that resumes of good attorneys that advance and partners look like. They're dry. They don't contain this stuff. Now, they may leave a law firm and run for Congress or something, but for the most part, they don't contain this sort of stuff. No one cares if you're interested in a practice area you're not doing. They just don't care. Law firms are only interested in hiring people who have experience doing the work, recent experience, and are committed to it. So sometimes people will litter their resumes with more garbage and activities that make it even more confusing. So you look at this resume and all you want to see, you have an opening for whatever, a corporate attorney, a personal injury attorney, a real estate attorney, and all of a sudden, their current job, for example, might be a litigation attorney doing commercial litigation. For that, they were a tax attorney. They helped an entertainer with tax issues, work on a trust. And so if you look at this, I want you to see the consistencies here. It's entertainment. It's entertainment. It's entertainment. This is what they think is important on their resume. And this is all, then they're listing all these things about entertainment. This is pretty clear. The person wants to be an entertainment attorney. They could have listed other types of matters that they worked on, but they thought entertainment was the most important. This person cannot apply for entertainment jobs because it makes it look like for non-entertainment jobs, because it makes it looking doing exactly what they don't want to do if they're applying for those. So clearly, this attorney doesn't want to be a litigator, family law, or tax attorney. And it's a complete waste of money and time. This is the kind of stuff I see when I review resumes all the time. And whoever hires someone for one of these roles would have to be insane. They're only going to gravitate towards your entertainment clients. They don't know what they want to do. You need to have one practice area and commit to it. So take a look at all the practice areas on BCG. Read what's going on in these practice areas. Like what are the niches that you could put yourself in? What are the niches that you could look like you're consistently doing? Because the more you put on your resume and the more practice areas and things, the further you're going to get away from a job. this is really the most I can say about this. I've said a lot. I really want you to get a position. I don't know what else I can do to make this clear, but you need to really focus in on something. And if you're not doing it right now, you need to think about, what could I do to make my resume focused on something? If you keep going in different directions, you're never going to be the person you want to be. There's a story, I don't need to tell a story, but most people are what's called dabblers. When the average 12-year-old or 10-year-old tries tennis for the first time, maybe they try tennis and then they try football, and then maybe they go back and they do baseball, and then maybe they go back and try a little tennis. Those people that do that are dabblers. And then maybe they never try tennis again. If you're going to be a really good tennis player, you need to focus on it. You need to do it as much as you can. You need to get a coach. You need to have that coach work with you. You need to continually improve your serve, and you need to continually improve your backhand and your game on the net and your volleys and all of these things. You need to continually work on improving, because no one is going to be good at tennis if they're not. And then you need to enter tournaments and get better in the tournaments, and then learn from your mistakes and go back and fix them. This is what the best tennis players do. You can't be a great tennis player if you're not working harder and harder and focused on being a tennis player than if you just do 15 different things. It's just not going to happen. Look at Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. He was doing incredibly well. He was the best basketball player arguably in the world. And then he decides to go do, like, he's just this guy that can do anything he wants because he's such a great athlete. He decides to go and try to become a professional baseball player. That didn't work out. You have to be focused from as much as you can, as long as you can, on doing one thing. And if you do that, you're often going to do very well. And that's what you need to do. I want you to become successful. I want you to be the person you're capable of being. And I want you to be a good attorney, because you can, if you start at the age of 25, focused on one thing, and maybe you were even focused on one thing before 25 when you graduate from law school, and you continue to do that, people are going to seek you out and want your help. So the best attorneys do one thing. They focus on doing corporate M&A transactions with mid-sized companies in the petroleum industry, or that are private equity-backed technology companies. You focus on one thing, and that's who, then you get all the clients. And no one else has that experience. I focus on one thing. I don't do any other type of placements, because not that it wouldn't be lucrative, and maybe I can make money if I worked on other things, but that's actually not the case. I will be better off being focused on one thing in the long run than doing multiple things. So here's another piece. I've talked about this a lot before. I've alluded to it so far in this webinar. I'll talk about it a little bit more now. This is getting worse. Resumes are doing more of this than they used to. And I don't know why, but I guess it's just the state of the world that we're in right now. But you do not want to make your resume a social piece that has nothing to do with being a law firm attorney. This country is in a socio-political war. All you need to do is review the news between competing people, between people trying to put their opponents in jail and vice versa, presidents, and it's a war. The fact that Republicans and Democrats hate each other with a vengeance should be obvious. People in the past were fighting about statues. They were fighting about having fewer or less police. There's people rioting in the streets and breaking into groups, breaking into stores. People are being ostracized and taken out of the job market and society for remarks that they made decades ago or that were misinterpreted. Some people hate the Supreme Court. Television, movies, and every form of entertainment is now suspect, and people are making sure that everything's changed there so they reflect the values of us, different people. People are mad about, as usual, which has been going on forever, abortion, guns, political parties, police, all this sort of thing. And I look at resumes all day. And again, I'm not criticizing anybody for being on one side or the other, because frankly, this stuff, how society changes for the better or worse, but it's what it is. And you have to understand that an attorney, their job is to be able to take sides on both sides of an issue. You have to be able to argue for one day for what does a prosecutor do? A prosecutor puts people in prison, and then they come out and then they decide to do white collar defense where they keep people out of prison. This is just how it works. So I look at resumes all day, and here's what I've started to see. I see the education, the law school. Then I see the person's a member of some group in law school. Then I see them list their being on a member group task force. Then I see them take classes in that member group for a group affiliation. Then I see their college, and same thing, a group. And then they may list extensive coursework in whatever this group is. And then in their experience, they talk about how they were a member of the group. And then they talk about how they did pro bono for the group. And sometimes I'm starting to see resumes. And again, these are resumes I'm seeing of people that are unemployed, and they can't understand why they're not getting a job. So they're just pushed out of these firms, and they think that they don't know why. And sometimes they're pushed out just because they're not doing good work. But then maybe the firm's laying people off, but then they're not getting jobs and other people are. And what they do a lot of times is they start off their resume talking about how they're the member of the Association of Gun Rights or whatever, and that they did pro bono work for people trying to carry guns. And then they'll have a one line about the fact that they're whatever type of attorney and did a little bit of work. Come on, like that person is not going to get hired, because obviously all these social causes of being a gun rights advocate are much more important to them than whatever work that they're doing. In the interest, they'll talk about being a member of the group. They'll talk about being a member of another group that's related to the same affiliated group. The publications, they'll have all these papers about the groups. Again, I look at these resumes all day, every day. And these are the people that aren't getting jobs. So you don't want to list these papers about all these groups or affiliations that you've written. You're obviously very much on the side of these things, but it's not helping you. The only thing that's going to help you is if you do papers about your practice area or that sort of thing. Academic papers about a group aren't going to help you. So I asked myself, what's going on here? If you're a Republican, an environmentalist, or whatever, you don't need to tell me about your opinion repeatedly throughout your resume. All that's showing is that your commitment to that opinion is more important than your commitment to your practice areas. Only thing I care about is the sort of work that you do. That's it. That's the only thing an employer cares about. For me, I make money when people get hired. That's how it works. And so as a business person, I need to concentrate and look at what's getting people hired. And if I thought all this stuff would help you, I would tell you to go gung-ho and list as many group affiliations and your political stance on various issues. I would tell you to get it on your resume and do whatever you can. But all I know is that people that do this don't get hired. That's all I care about. I don't know why they don't get hired. It's not my business to look into an employer's motivation, but they typically do not get law firm jobs. So regardless of and sometimes they do out of school. I'm not saying that if you go to Columbia Law School and you're at the top of their class, no one's going to hire you if you have this stuff. But ultimately, when they're looking for lateral attorneys, they want people to be committed to something. They just don't, and they want them to be committed to working in a law firm and enthusiastic about it. Again, do you think you're going to be able to get a job in a major city? I saw this once. I saw a guy that had been at the top of his class at Yale College, had been waitlisted at Yale Law School, and had gone to the University of Virginia Law School, where I went. And then all he did was play polo and was part of these different groups that did things with polo, and listed that he was a Republican and a member of the Mayflower Society, which is, I guess, for people whose relatives came over in the Mayflower. And he thought that would help him get a job. No, it didn't. He literally didn't get a summer associate job. And then he didn't get a job after he graduated, even though he went to a good law school and did well. listing that stuff on your resume that you're more special than others because you came over on the Mayflower and now you play polo, and is not going to help you. And it's probably not a good thing to list that you're a diehard Republican if you're trying to get a job in New York City. It just doesn't work. Law firms hire people to be advocates for their clients. They hire people that want to do that type of work. So the larger the law firm, the more likely those clients are going to be powerful, wealthy groups and people. And so as people and businesses become wealthier, more powerful, they want employees and attorneys whose politics aren't going to interfere with the service they're getting. They can afford to act this way. They're paying. They want efficiency, meritocracy. They want loyalty. And they don't want attorneys who undermine them and serve their causes instead of the attorneys. And so the law firms, this is what happens all the time. Young attorneys go to law firms, and when they go to the law firm, they decide that they want that people that are on the wrong side of whatever politics they believe don't deserve good representation, and therefore they're going to try to undermine it or not give them that, or sometimes they'll just flat out refuse to work on certain matters. And the fact of the matter is almost all employers and companies that they represent want to run businesses that make money, and businesses that will get behind social causes if it benefits them. But to the extent it does not benefit them, they will not. I can't list the number of companies that have decided to get on the side of a social issue and how much it's hurt them. Disney used to be tax exempt. And now, so all these things hurt businesses when they do it. And it also hurts the people that work there because they can't afford to pay them as much. And businesses and the people who own them, they want lower taxes. They want easier business climates. They want fewer lawsuits against them and much more. And if you want to make your resume about social issues, go ahead and knock yourself out. But what's going to happen is people will avoid you. I'm not sure how many different ways to say this. I'm not sure how much to stress it to you. I'm not sure how it's going to help you. I'll give you a couple of examples. Just one. So when I went to college, I started taking all of these because I liked them. I was exposed to them as a freshman. I had to take these classes. All of these classes that were basically about sociology, how the government needed to step in and help all these different groups, and how it was awful that what was going on, how this is part of history and how history needed to change and all these things. So I was very much on the side of people that needed help. And then I actually went and spent my summers creating work for those people and writing letters of recommendation. But the point of the matter is I did all that on my resume, and I interviewed for positions as trying to get a job before I went to law school with companies, and no one in their right mind, mind you, was interested in me because that's all I talked about. They knew that if I went to work there, that's what it would be. You can't. And so sometimes schools will push you to go onto one side of a social cause and give you good grades for it. But in the real world, you have to leave this stuff off if you want to. In my case, I was trying to work in investment banks. I needed to get that stuff off my resume. And I look at resumes all the time, and it's getting worse. I looked at a resume, and this was actually someone that was working for us that couldn't get a job. And I was having talked to candidates at BCG. This person was very highly qualified with great law schools and great law firms, but couldn't get a job. And then I realized that the reason this person couldn't get a job is they talked about being a member of this same social group over 27 times on their one-page resume, meaning you couldn't get an interview in New York City. 27 times he mentioned his affiliation with this group. And he'd been to resume coaches, career counselors, and everyone was afraid to tell him what was wrong with their resume. I was too. If I had told him what was wrong with his resume, I would have been branded someone that was on the wrong side of an issue and in trouble. So why did I hire the person? I hired the person because I think they generally were interested in giving people interview advice, but in this particular, and had for a certain niche of doing that. But no one would tell this guy what was wrong with his resume. And what was wrong is he was trying to get a position in a law firm representing companies where he mentioned his social political affiliation 27 times. And he spent more time discussing that than his 10 years of legal experience. people do not care about this. The focus is your legal experience. He'd been a member of a social affinity group in law school and college and wrote for a social affinity group journal and did social affinity work while practicing law. It was the first thing he listed. And then he worked for a judge who was a member of the social political group. And he told that in his resume. And he wrote some law review articles for about the social affinity group. And then he led a social affinity group at 2 law firms. I don't care if this person is proud of being a member of the social political affinity group. I don't care if it's a right wing or left wing or centrist social political group. I don't care. All I care about is getting the person a job. Instead of listing 27 times stuff about the social affinity group, what the person should have done was listed 27 times their commitment to one practice area and had journals about that and memberships and all that sort of stuff. Just think about this. If I list that I'm a Christian 27 times on my resume, is that going to help me? Or if I list that I'm a member of Mensa 27 times on my resume, is that going to help me? If I list that I like guns 27 times on my resume, is this going to help me? If I list that I'm pro-life for 27 times on my resume, is this going to help me? And this is more common than you think. Now, 27 times, of course, is a lot of time, but when people do this on their resume, it doesn't benefit them. So if you make your resume a social political document, you're going to immediately alienate tons of people, and you have no one to blame, no one but yourself. And if you make your resume for a law firm job a social political statement, here's what happens. Here's what people think. They think, I hate pro-life people, or I hate pro-choice people, or I hate Democrats, or I hate Republicans. This looks like the sort of person that may discriminate against me. Is this person going to expect myself? And again, I'm not criticizing these pronouns. I think it's important that people are told or talked to if they're unsure about and the way they prefer to be talked to. I'm not judging this, and I see the purpose of it. But at the same time, you have to people are scared of things. Now, they're scared of it now somewhat. I don't know, but there are people that I think are, because I've heard of it. I've heard people, not in my business, but in other businesses, make remarks about it. You have to say to yourself, and again, I'm not against this, but you're throwing things in there that you have to be careful. If someone likes it, that they like reading the New York Times on Sunday, the New York Times has turned into a very liberal publication. And so people know that. The editorials, the same thing with the Wall Street Journal, it's very conservative, and people may not, and the editorials are conservative. And then people often will think if these various things are listed, that they hope that they're not going to get sued by this person, like the last person in the group did. And they'll think that maybe they're more interested in their group than their job. So law firms are risk averse. They also need to hire people that are focused on something. And so these are just all things you need to understand. So you can do whatever you want in your resume. You can talk about all these things. You can talk about them as much as you want. I'm not going to even say anything to you on your resume. I may hint at it, but I'm not going to say, I don't think that you should list that you like to spend your weekends in the gun range on your resume, because that may be highly personal to you, and you may call me names if I tell you that and try to put me in some sort of box. But what I will tell you is this. People who make their resume social political documents get fewer interviews and often do not get hired. It happens all the time. People that go to good law schools and start off with good firms that decide to turn their resumes into this will sit there and not know why they're not getting interviews and won't get hired. So I don't make the rules. It is what it is. They can call it discrimination. I'm assume it is. But again, someone that is in the Midwest and is a supporter of conservative causes is probably there's whole towns that are that way. I might have relatives that live in a small town in Ohio, and it doesn't matter who the Republican candidate is. Every single lawn has signs for the presidential. And if you show up there and you're like far left, they're not going to like you. Same thing as if those people were to show up in New York or it's discrimination, whatever, but no one cares. No one cares about these things. And I'm telling you this because I've seen so many careers just completely destroyed by this. And I don't like it any more than you do. But I know a guy that was completely he looked white, he sounded white. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being white. Some people would even call him white bread, but but he was in the Federalist Society. He was at the top of his class at a top 10 law school, and he could not get a single interview in all of San Francisco because he made people uncomfortable there. It's just, that's not how the climate is there. If you heard about homeless and the priorities of that city, you will realize that it's a very liberal place. And he made people uncomfortable there with his background. I worked with a woman that had experienced a traumatic event, meaning someone had done something very bad to her. And she listed what had happened to her, that she was a member of all these support groups and things for what had happened to her multiple times on her resume. And when I say something bad happened to her, it involved traumatic violence. And she was in San Francisco and had gone to Stanford Law School, which means that there are people there that would have been very sympathetic to her cause. But she couldn't get interviews later. So this social stuff is a landmine. I don't care. I don't care. You can go into politics and announce your social stuff. But let me just tell you what happens when you don't put this stuff on there. You get more interviews. People interview you for your strength in your practice area and how good you look for the firm, and this stuff doesn't interfere. And you're in control. You can be selective about who you reveal the information to. You can make small remarks. If you see someone in the law firm is interested in that and bond with them in a covert way based on that. But you want to alienate certain people unless you want to. You want to show up for interviews with firms, and people will respect you for not trying to get too far into this. But if you advertise it on your resume, for example, that your father is like a big time businessman with a lot of money, there's a lot of people that won't like this. They're going to resent you for using this to try to get ahead. Now, you can get into firms other ways through networking and not bringing it up, for example, with people that may know your father, but that's different. There's really no difference between this and many times in identifying with a group. When you lead with social political statements, you're asking for special treatment because your membership in there, and that you're actually saying that you expect your application to move forward based on your leanings rather than your accomplishments. And again, one of the reasons I bring this up is because certain schools will emphasize that people should be very gung-ho about, will look better if they have this stuff on their resume, but it doesn't help you, is all I'm saying. You really don't want to make any issues out of your social and political views. To succeed, you need to make your resume focused on a practice area, and don't list competing areas of law, and stay away from those sorts of competing statements. Be hired on your merit and be laser focused on your experience. So that's the webinar for today. I will come back in a few minutes and take a quick break and answer questions. I don't have a lot of time for questions today, but what I do want to bring to your attention is next week, because it'll come off of this, I will be doing a resume review. And the resume review will go into a lot of detail about resumes. So I will put into the chat an email to send your resume. So all of these issues that you may see in your resume, I will try to review next week. I will try to get to all the resumes next week in the resume review. What I'd appreciate you doing is, you can send your existing resume, but it would actually be good after hearing this webinar if you could make some changes to your resume based on the information that we cover. And that's going to, based on what we talked about today. I realized that I went into an awful lot of detail about this and said the same thing over and over. The reason that I did that, and I thought that was important, was because, unfortunately, most people, when they do their resumes, don't realize this, and you just have to talk to them over and over about this. And I've been seeing this for so long. I've been seeing it for years, and it just doesn't stop. And then it keeps over and over again hurting people. Now, the final thing I just want to say is, I don't think there's anything, I think it's actually very positive if you're more interested sometimes in social related things. For example, people that went to Yale Law School and different law schools are very passionate about these social things. These are the people, by the way, that become important politicians and change the world. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of this. These are very good things and characteristics. What I'm concerned about, though, is you working in a law firm, you doing well in a law firm, you advancing in a law firm. And if you do this stuff well, that's exactly what's going to happen to you. So I will take a quick break, then I will come back. And when I come back, I will answer questions. I don't have a ton of time to answer questions today. So if I do ask questions, what I will do is I will try to keep those questions in mind for when we do the resume review next week. And these resume reviews, by the way, are live. And when I do the resume review, I will be talking to everyone about the resume live. And if you give me your questions this week, I will try to refer to them the following week, next week when we do a resume review. And then in addition to that, I will make sure that I cover your question in the following week. And again, I apologize. This has not been the longest webinar, and I wish I had more time for questions, but I will answer as many as I can in the next few minutes when I come back from a quick break. All right. So give me just 1 second. I'm going to pull up these questions. Just be a second. First one is, in the past, I've taken on temporary positions in different practice areas. How should I address these short-term experiences in my resume to avoid giving the impression that I lack commitment in my direction or legal career? Okay, so that's a good point. So temporary positions will typically mean that you've been a contract attorney, and that's actually sometimes okay. And there's different ways of approaching that. Now, sometimes people are contract attorneys because they like the flexibility. So I've seen in my career lots of people that became contract attorneys and actually retired very early because they were able to save a lot of money. And then after doing that, just went into other careers. I've seen other people transition from being contract attorneys to full-time attorneys in large law firms and doing so based on performing well as a contract attorney. But one of the issues here that you're talking about is you're trying to say you lack commitment or direction in your legal career. So one way, I think I may have talked about this earlier in today's webinar, would try to make yourself look like you have an e-discovery focus. So you can talk about all of the different things that you did with e-discovery and leave it at that. And so having different kind of varied experiences in something like e-discovery can help you. And that's a real practice area where people can do very well in law firms, meaning I've seen people make hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that. Now, so you can focus things that way. Now, another way to do that would be, you may talk about, you could sometimes list multiple firms on your resume that you may have done that type of work for, and then list this under your experience and just talk about saying you were a discovery attorney or something along those lines, or what that experience was. Now, the biggest thing to understand, though, is once you become a contract attorney, it is, even though people do it because they want to earn money, it is a little dangerous because you're not permanent, even though the freedom is something that you get, but you're not permanent. The work is generally not stuff that requires a lot of training. That can hurt you to some extent if you do that. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but you never develop an expertise, which can hurt you, develop an expertise. And then you're put at a disadvantage because it looks like you're willing to accept pay for a lower amount of money. So that's just how it works, but pay hourly and not a permanent position. So that's how that works. Now, I'm not saying this is able to be overcome because I'm going to show you what to do. But what that essentially means is if you're working as a contract attorney, there's different categories of firms. So I do this every week, but a lot of it comes back to this. So these are your most prestigious, almost impossible to get firms with, previous firms. They do bet the company work and that sort of thing. And so these are really the places that are just extremely difficult for any attorneys. Then you have your AmLaw 100, 200 firms, where, by the way, most attorneys here could not get a job in a 5 firm, could never get a job in a 5 firm. So it's just something to keep in mind. And these are obviously, these clients have the most money. These clients have a lot of money. These clients, then you have mid-sized. firms. These clients have not as much money. And then these are smaller firms representing individuals and smaller businesses. And these firms represent individuals. So this is the good news. So the good news is, even if you're a contract attorney, as a contract attorney, you're probably not going to be able to get position unless you're doing e-discovery. These firms are pretty much off limits, but these firms are all within limits. So these firms do not pay as much. But they're good places to get experience. And at these firms, you can actually get experience in a practice area that is marketable. So if you want to do company-related work, there's more money to be made working for large companies or companies that have work. So you can make more money working for these companies or for these types of firms than you would be able to. Then you can make more money if you work in these bigger firms that have big books that represent big companies. Then you could make working for companies that are representing individuals. That's just how it works. If you're doing that, then you're obviously going to be much better off in the long run when you work for people that have more money. So all you need to do, if you've been working as a contract attorney and it's going to be difficult for you to get a job in one of these big firms, is just to start off lower. And this could be doing wills for individuals. This could be doing wills for wealthy individuals. This could be doing wills and for trust and estates work for even larger clients. And this is primarily companies, a few individuals. And this is the same thing as primarily individual, some companies. So individuals have less money. So the more individuals you're representing, the more you can do different types of work. So this is actually a very good question. But the idea is if you have things on your resume that aren't focused, you have to take pretty much a lower paying job to start. And when you take a lower paying job, you can move your way up to not to 5 firms, but even 4 firms is possible. You can move your way up if you're able to have if you have this sort of experience. Okay, so let me go here. In the context of a legal job search, are there specific strategies for candidates with non-traditional backgrounds, such as those transitioning from a different industry or coming from a diverse range of educational backgrounds to craft their resume? Make sure. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So many times when you come from a non-traditional background, like you may have been doing something completely unrelated, sometimes you just leave that experience off, and you can go and just go into your resume related to your legal experience. Even if you have 10 years of experience working in a corporation or something, you can just go into your resume based on legal experience. Other times you can list what you did, and this is actually very good if you want to be in that practice area. If patent law, when you were an engineer, that could be helpful. And then you could list your engineering experience, list that. So that could be helpful. And then now you're doing patent, which is a move up. And you can do that. You can do things like if you were in real estate, now want to be a real estate attorney, that. So if things are related, then that's actually good. And if it looks you're moving up in something related, that's very good. So that can help you. Now, if it's completely unrelated, then you need to be careful about it. And you need to basically be careful. What you need to make sure you need to make sure that being an attorney, and this is a big rule here. So I hope if you're in this situation and you're watching this, I hope you understand it. You need to make sure that being an attorney looks like a move up. So if it doesn't look like a move up, then it's going to be a problem. If you were in a position where you were giving orders to important people, that's not good. If you were in a position, so one example that I had is I was working not too long ago with someone that had gone to medical school and then had become a doctor and then was the dean of the law school. and then decided to become not a law school of a medical school, and then decided that they wanted to become a lawyer. And people were like, no, it's like, why would we want someone that was formerly the head of a big medical school working for us? And so that person had a really hard time. The other person that had people that have a hard time are entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs are people that started and run businesses and been independent businesses and been independent. So that can hurt them. So you have to understand, you have to make sure, if you've done other experience, you have to make sure that being an attorney looks like a move up and not down. If it looks like a move down, then the law firms are going to think that you're not going to stick around. Law firms look for, there's a bunch of things, but I talk about this in most webinars and questions, but a bunch of things that law firms look for. They look at, will you stick around? Will you do the job long term? Meaning stick around. Meaning stick around. Can you be managed? Managed. Do you want the job? Do we like you? And then can you do the job? Meaning, do you have the skills? Skills, motivation, skills, endurance. Meaning, if you're someone that's going to be expected to work 200 hours a month, are you really going to want to do that? If you've been having your own business or thing, who knows? But you need to be very careful to do that. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so this next question. So you mentioned the importance of aligning one's resumes with the needs of a potential employer. What strategies can job seekers use to tailor their resumes for smaller niche firms that might not have a widely recognized brand? So a smaller niche firm, and this question means there are law firms that do like only corporate transactional work for smaller businesses that only do, there's firms that might do only like appellate litigation and things like that. So it doesn't matter if the firm has a recognized brand or not. Niche firms have the same hiring standards, the same considerations or that large law firms have for hiring people that are focused. So it's the exact same thing, and often more so it's the same thing. So they still, the large law firms really want focus, and so you need to be aware of that. 1 second. Okay, so large law firms want focus, but niche law firms want more focus. Firms want just as much focus, and actually sometimes even more. Want just as much focus, often more. Okay. All right, so let's see. Okay, so this is a good question. These are really good questions today. They're not as long as last week's, but they're very good. How do I address potential concerns of employers who may view my specialization as limiting? Are there ways to frame my specialization as an asset rather than a constraint on my career potential? So here's just how it works again. So I'll go down the thing. 3, 2, 1, 5, 4. Most specialized, very specialized, specialized. I'm sorry, give me a second here. Specialized, less specialized, somewhat specialized, then maybe specialized, some possibly specialized. So one of the problems is when you start working in the most sophisticated firms, most of the time the specialization that you're going to need is going to be related to being basically in a position where you may have a practice area that is, you're not going to have as many options as you might with a little bit more less specialized area. I remember there used to be it's no longer in existence. It merged with Sidley and Austin a long time ago, but it used to be called Brown and Wood. And it was this law firm in New York where people where there were different types of corporate attorneys, and some of them were so specialized, there was literally only a couple other law firms in the world in New York that did it. So that would be the example of being too specialized. But most practice areas, if you're specialized, that's actually okay. The only thing that you're doing when you're in a very specialized practice area is you may be limiting yourself to having a little bit more difficult time working in firms. Also, the way it works, it's important to understand, is larger the law firm, the more specialized they typically are. The larger the law firm and market meaning the largest markets are going to be most specialized. And then the smaller markets are going to be less specialized because there's just not many attorneys. So they need to do everything. So the attorneys need to do everything. So what I'm talking about is really in your mid-sized to larger markets, you need to be more specialized. You need to do more than one thing. So that's what I'm talking about there, is that in your smaller markets, they need to do more than one thing because there's just not a lot of attorneys there. If you are a generalist, you're better off being a generalist in a smaller market where you want to live than doing so in a larger market, because larger markets, the clients are typically go to the largest cities in order to find specialists. So it's just very important to understand that. Let me just here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this real quickly, just because this is very common on resumes. I've read conflicting advice about whether to include a career objective or summary statement on a resume. In the context of committing myself to a specialist, should I use this statement? If so, no, absolutely not. You don't want to use these things at the top of your resume. Most of the time, when people do this, the reason they're doing it is because they went to a resume company when they lost their jobs in a corporation. Generally, they go to them, or they're older, can't find jobs, cannot find jobs, and bored. I don't know, bored and thinking a better resume. I'll just tell you, how did I learn this? When I first saw it, I remember my mother had essentially taken retirement from her company when she became a recruiter. She took a job when she had taken a buyout from the state where she worked and decided to go back to work, and kept going to resume companies, and they kept writing all this stuff and trying to position her a certain way. And in the reality, what was going on is she was just older and no one would hire her because she'd been doing a job basically advocating for people that weren't hired because they were handicapped and so forth for the state. And now she wanted to do something else. So you absolutely are not going to be, most of the time, this does not help you. Most of the time, the people that have this done are older attorneys that are thinking that summarizing all this will help them. These summaries and career objectives and so forth do not say anything. The only thing that talks, the only thing that makes that point is your past experience. That's it, nothing else. So that's all you need to worry about, is what you do and how you show your experience. Saying you're a committed generalist, it's capable of doing this and this, doesn't help you. Your past experience is great, but your past experience is presumed. So someone who's a partner at a major law firm may just list partner for a corporate partner specializing in corporate M&A or something, specializing in corporate M&A or early stage technology company or something. That's it. They don't list like the 50 different things they've done from when they were associate to a partner. They just list a few. They just go like that. That's it. You don't need the less is more many times. And the more stuff you list, the more it looks like you're trying to do things. The more you list an objective, you better hope that like hell, you have an objective. If you're 20 years, some of these resumes are like 30 plus years out of law school, you better hope like hell that you have an objective. But your objective is going to come through based on all the past experiences you've done. And it's sad. I'm not trying to say that I'm not empathetic, because I really am empathetic with everyone. And this is what I am. But it is sad that people do this and are told to do this when they get older. Sometimes they think that keywords are picked up by machines, and that's which is somewhat true, and going to help them. But I don't know that I've ever placed an attorney out of the thousands of attorneys I've placed. And again, I want to be very clear about this because how important it is. I don't know if I've ever placed an attorney that has put these summaries at the top of the resume to use. So I'm saying don't use that, but where you should emphasize this, you emphasize your focus in your experience. That's it. You emphasize it there, and that's it. That's it. And then if you don't have a lot of focus, here's another thing you do. If you don't have a lot of focus, say even less. Even less. Don't draw the law firms away from your lack of focus. You'd be crazy, right? Why would you do that? So you just list less. Okay, let me see. Wow, these are great questions today. Thank you for everyone who's asking these. This is another great question. So sometimes my passion for a particular practice area does not align with job market demand. I'm going to talk to you how to do that in a second. How can I balance between pursuing my passion and choosing a practice area that's more in demand to increase my job prospects? Okay, so there are some risky practice areas. And what are those practice areas? So your riskiest practice areas are always, corporate is risky. It's not risky when the market's good, risky. Not at all when it's not at all risky when the market's good. I mean, when market's good, the market is good. It's good, but risky when it's not. Okay, so that's corporate. And then less risky practice areas are generally things like insurance defense. I'm just telling you, because insurance companies are always representing people, litigation, patent. There's just some real estate's risky, tax is risky. But so sometimes there's risky practice areas, and then you often will have a lack of job market demand because of things. So when a risky practice area, if the economy slows, then corporate is obviously going to get very bad. And sometimes there are these less risky practice areas that are in trust in the states actually isn't a risky one. Family law, not risky. There's just a bunch of these practice areas that are risky and less risky. So important to understand. So my point here, though, is that because of what's going on here with these practice areas, you need to understand that sometimes you may be in a practice area that may be in trouble. So a better thing here would be, what do I do when my practice area is not in demand? And this is not in demand. So this is a very important question. If you are on this call and this is worth the price of admission, because there's not cost for that. So what you do is you make sure that you start applying to different markets. Different markets or smaller markets or larger markets, wherever the opportunity is. You need to start looking at different markets, and you can figure out what you can do. There's a guide to bar reciprocity on BCG, whatever. You need to start looking at different markets, and that's really the smartest thing you can do. The more markets you look at, the more likely you are to get a job. If corporate slows down in a big market like Chicago, then you can start looking at suburbs of Chicago and jobs in other parts of Illinois. And then you can see where you can look at different markets, or you can start looking at smaller firms, all that sort of stuff. So all you do when your practice area slows down is you can look at other markets. That's what I recommend doing. That works in all economies. And why does it work? It works because what happens is in when a practice area slows down in a different market, in a certain market, it typically will pick the smaller law firms can pick up people that normally wouldn't work there. That can be good for their clients. The firms in smaller markets can pick up people that wouldn't normally work there. But the big thing is because when a practice area is slowing down in big firms, a lot of those companies still have work. They're just going to send the work to smaller firms that are less expensive. And that's actually good for you. You may go to a smaller firm and have a much better chance of making partner when you can bring in clients and everything. If you have great qualifications, than you might otherwise in another type of firm. And we should have time for a couple more questions. These questions are so good that I'm actually going. Okay, so this is a good question. I think it's probably going to be the last question. I may take one after this. I'm tailoring my resume, meticulously highlight my skills and experience, but I'm still struggling to secure a job offer. Could you share uncommon strategies that can make my resume stand up for competition? Sure. So one of the strategies, and that I recommend, and it's actually a very easy one, is apply to firms that do not have openings. So an example would be, for example, you're a trust in the state's attorney in I don't know, in Quincy, Illinois, it's a small town. I don't know, Quincy, I guess Quincy's okay. How about Indianapolis? Or how about, I don't know, or just do Quincy, Illinois. The idea is you would search for other attorneys. You could do Google, and you could search for Google and search for those jobs, search for firms doing that work, and all your firms doing that work and around Quincy or wherever you would want to live in Illinois. So that's going to help you. That's a specialty. You can do that. So that's one strategy. Another strategy, and then you apply to those places, regardless of whether or not they have those jobs. So the big thing with applying to firms without jobs that's very important is when you apply to firms without jobs, you are the only applicant. So that's automatically helps you. So automatically you're more likely to get a job because just because of that. So you need to keep that in mind, more likely to get a job. So if you do that, more firms are, if you're the only applicant, that makes it one of the most important things. Your resume automatically stands out. I'll just tell you, I used to, not because I wanted to keep practicing law, but because I wanted to be able to represent my company effectively in various legal disputes. I used to have a law firm basically, and then I would do all my recruiting stuff. In the entire history of that law firm, only 3 or 4 people over 15 years ever submitted their resume with no jobs. And then 2 of them walked into the firm and asked to work there. And one of them I hired. And out of the people that submitted their resumes without walking in, I hired another one. So think about that. This was one of the most smartest things anyone can do is apply to firms in your practice area without jobs. Your resume will stick out. Very few attorneys are sitting there and get people sending their resumes to them. It just doesn't happen. If you're doing that, you're going to automatically get positions. Now, some other uncommon strategies are apply to firms in smaller markets that don't get a lot of applicants. That's huge. If you do that, you're also going to have a much better ability to get a job. And hopefully firms without openings. So that's going to help you as well in doing that. So those are some of the best pieces of advice I can tell you. Or the other one, another uncommon one, is apply to firms that are more prestigious, and focus on your practice area. Or less prestigious. That's it. So that's it. So if you do those things, you're much more likely to stand out from the competition and get a job offer. It's just, this works. And so I don't know how else to say it. And when I say searching Google, the reason I say that is because Google finds every firm And a lot of times the jobs on the firms in different lists are just the ones that are paying that. So the firms in different lists are the ones that are paying that. One's paying to be there. And I do have a final suggestion, and this is actually self-centered. I usually don't talk about this, but I think it's actually one of the best ones. We have a company, or I do, called Law Crossing. What Law Crossing does is it gathers jobs from employer websites, from companies, law firms, government, whatever, and it gets firms from firms that do not have, that are not on Indeed or Google for Jobs and so forth, and that is very helpful. So having that ability to find those employers means that they're firm websites, they're in places where Indeed and all these other job sites or LinkedIn most of the time will charge employers to put their jobs there. And so without charging employers and doing all that research for you, it's a very good way to be able to do that. There's one other, and that's about it. By the way, if you stayed on here for this whole resume, you can send your resume. Let me just stop here real quickly. I just want to make sure I give you the right email address. And this is a treat if you're still on this webinar. I should have talked about it earlier, but you want to email. A second. But so if you want to have your resume reviewed next week, I'm just going to put this up there real quickly, and then I've got to roll. Let me see here. So if you want to have your resume reviewed next week, you can send it to Jared at barristerconsulting.com. Barrister Consulting Group is, by the way, what BCG stands for, but it's Jared, Jared, at barristerconsulting.com. And then we'll review your resume next week. And so that's it on the resume call next week. Thank you, everyone, for being on this meeting today. I think we definitely covered a lot, and hopefully just this piece of this advice that we covered this week can make a massive difference in your success next week. And please do send your resumes. I usually get to all of them on a call. I almost always do. If I don't, I go this next week, but I should be able to get through all the resumes by next week. Thanks again for everyone being on the call. And next week's webinar will be a resume review. So thanks again. Bye-bye.